So you finally found a transcription of that solo you love by Miles or Train or Wes or whoever, but you can barely sight read music, and unfortunately there's no tab included. So where on the fretboard do you even start to play it? What fingerings should you use? It can be overwhelming, but don't lose hope just yet, because I've got some good news. In this lesson, I am going to demonstrate a 3-step procedure for any guitarist to get the most out of a jazz solo transcription that doesn't include the tab. However, before I do, I just have a small disclaimer. Even if you really aren't a sight reader, I will assume that you can at least decipher the notes on a music staff, that you understand how to count rhythms, and know some basic jazz theory. Otherwise, I don't think you'll get very far. Oh, and it should go without saying, but it sure helps to have a recording of the solo so you can listen to it as you learn it. I'm Richie Zellen, and I want to welcome you to the Jazz Guitar channel, where I bring you weekly lessons covering everything related to the art of playing jazz guitar. For the examples I am going to show you today, I am going to use a transcription of the third chorus of Miles Davis's solo on Tune Up from the album Blue Haze. The first step is to decide where on the fretboard you are going to start playing this. For most instruments, this is a no-brainer because a middle C, for instance, is available in only one place. But as guitarists, we have several options. So for starters, let's scan the first 8 measures and determine how broad of a range it covers. But wait, let's not forget one important detail. This is written in concert pitch, so we first have to transpose it up an octave if we want to read it for guitar and have it sound in the same pitch range that the original solo is played in. So here it is now, transposed, and if you know how to map the notes from the staff to the fretboard, you'll notice that everything can be played below the 12th fret. The highest note is the E on the 6th measure, and the lowest note is the C sharp on the 4th measure. So from the key signature, I know it's in D, and I realize I could play it up here in 9th position, and it would cover the full range of the solo without much effort. Now all I have to do is base it on a D major scale fingering that would cover this range. This is how most guitarists tend to begin learning a transcription with no tabs supplied. And herein lies the problem of why, even though they reproduce the notes of the given solo correctly, in the long run, the phrases aren't retained to become part of their improvisational vocabulary. Let me first play these 8 measures in order to explain the root of this problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3. Okay, what I did there was simply sight read, according to the D major key signature, and I threw in some alterations as dictated by the written music, but at no moment was I aware of what actual chords I was playing over. What I am trying to convey here is that on the guitar, sight reading a transcription and learning it for the purpose of acquiring vocabulary are 2 different concepts requiring different approaches. If you're a guitarist, when you solo over changes, you don't remain physically in one position. You tend to move around the fretboard and change scales and fingerings in accordance with the harmony. You might not have to, but is sometimes technically convenient and also allows you to better visualize and be aware of the actual chord changes. Therefore, mapping the transcription onto the fingerings you would normally use, say over a 2-5-1, is something essential. And this in turn enables you to understand how the notes in the transcription are used in the context of the familiar scales and fingerings you normally would employ if you were to improvise over that given standard. This is the common ground that your mind requires in order to assimilate the new ways in which these notes are being used. So with this approach in mind, let's take a second look at those measures. So what I initially do is I look at the chord symbols and try to determine what fingering for that given scale or arpeggio fits that range, and it's got to be something that I can visualize, and I'll take the melody and try to play it with that given fingering. So for example, we're starting out in E minor 7 here, and I'm going to stay in 9th position here, and I'm visualizing this E minor Dorian. And within that, I can see that what's written there for that first measure. Now I'm going to an A7, and I'm going to stay in that same position, but I'm visualizing this Mixolydian A scale. And I can easily play the A, that F sharp, and I'm going to a D major 7 now, and I'm going to just play the initial one I did that I've been sight reading this on, and it's, and of course I'm playing this E here, and then I'm still in D. Now it's a D minor, so I'm going to stay in that same fingering, only that I'm going to turn it into a Dorian. I can easily visualize that, of course. And then it goes to a G7. I'm also going to stay in that position, and I'm visualizing this Mixolydian here. And I play this A here. And now I need to move. I need to move somewhere where I can really be aware of that C major 7. So I'm going to move down here to 7th position, and I can really see that there. Okay, and then it's going to a C minor 7. I could stay there, but I think I'm going to go into 8th position. And then I'm going to F. I'm going to stay in 8th position here, and I'm going to visualize this F Mixolydian. I can play this melody here. And that resolves to the first note of the B flat major, and I'm going to play that one right here. And then it goes to an E minor 7, and I'm going to move here and play these two notes. And then it goes to an A7, and I think I'm going to move down here. Wow, doesn't look like an A7 Mixolydian, what we have written here. It's ending on this D major 7. So as you've seen, I've kind of mapped out the different fingerings that I can visualize these different chord changes in as I'm playing it, and it'll stick better in my head, and I'll be able to take a lot of those ideas. So let's see what it sounds like playing it according to this mapping that I did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3. So now that we've got the solo mapped out with the fingerings you would naturally employ for this progression, there is still a final step we need to cover in order to really get the most out of it. And I'm referring to a melodic analysis. You might or might not have the knowledge to do this, but if you don't, just by watching me do it next, you'll learn some of the basics, and then you might be motivated to seek out the resources so you can take it to the next level. When you perform a melodic analysis, you are in essence getting into the improviser's mind to understand how he thinks when he is soloing. And this will help you learn and assimilate some of the ways a master improviser deals with the given harmony. I'm talking about the development of his lines and rhythms in the context of the entire solo, and not just an isolated 2-measure riff over one chord. So hopefully you'll realize that even if the tab is supplied in a transcription, this is still an essential additional step. And before I continue, I want to recommend that you watch another video which I did a few years back called Why, When, and How to Transcribe a Jazz Solo. There I go into depth into several cool things you can accomplish once you understand a transcription, as well as lots of valuable information regarding the overall process that is involved. And it is the perfect complement to this lesson, and I will place a link in the info section down below this video. So next, let's label the function of all the notes in relation to the chord symbols supplied in the transcription. And one of the things that you will discover by doing this is that you will find that several measures may contain notes that apparently conflict with the chord symbols. So, does this mean that the soloist made a mistake? Absolutely not. For the most part, commercial transcriptions use the conventional changes for any given standard in the chord symbols that are notated over the solo. Usually they don't tell you what upper extensions or substitutions the soloist employed. And as you probably know, it is common practice in jazz to use different harmonic resources not written in when improvising. So with that in mind, let's get with it. So in the initial measure, we have an E minor 7. And that first C sharp would actually be the 6th in an E minor Dorian. So it would be C sharp, B, 6 going to 5, back to 6, back to 5. So initially my first impression is that Miles was thinking over the 5 chord from the very beginning and not over the E minor 7. And he was probably thinking 3, 2, 3. And he was going to the next measure and then playing the root, which I was playing here, and then going to the 13 and going to the D to the 9th, playing that twice. And then on the 4th measure, he's doing a little neighboring tone which acts as a pickup to start the fifth measure, the D, the root, and then he's going up the scale. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, which is really acting as the 11th here. He's holding it. And then he's going to the G7 to the 9th. And that is followed by the 3, which continues with a chromatic run up all the way to the 5. Ending on the 6 or 13. And then he goes to the C major 7, and I moved here to 7th position, and we have the 9, 1, 7, 6, 5, sharp 4, natural 4, and the 3. So he's doing a little chromatic run from the 5 to the 3. And as a lead into the C minor 7, he plays the third, the major third, which then goes down half step. And I went up into 8th position. And then he's doing another run up the scale. Flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7. Then he's going to a 2 or a 9. Flat 3, back to 2, 1. And he goes to the F, and I stayed in the same position. And here he's starting out with an enclosure to the 5 of F. So he's going a chromatic below that 5, playing the 6, and then resolving. And this is where we start to see some jazz language, you know, some characteristic approaches of the bebop idiom. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And he does a chromatic approach to the B flat, to the 5th of the B flat, which is here, this F. And I played the F, and then a 3, and 5 again, 6, major 7, 1, and then 9, 3, 9, 1. And then I moved here, and he plays the 11th over that E minor 7th. And then in the A7th here, we don't really have a Mixolydian. We have an A7 altered if we analyze it. So I played this here in 5th position, and that D flat is an enharmonic for a C sharp, which is the 3rd. Then he's playing the sharp 11, the flat 13, the flatted 7, the root, the flat 9, and then for the final chord, the D major 7, we have this C natural, and there is no C natural for a D major 7th chord. You know, it would be a C sharp. So let's look at the rest of the notes. It's doing a C natural. There is no B flat in a D major 7th chord. Goes back to that C natural, back to that B flat, and then finally to an A, which is the first note that is actually in a D major 7th. So what is really going on here is that he delayed the resolution to that final 1 chord, that D major 7, and played a measure and a half over the A7 altered. So he goes 1. So now that you've analyzed all the notes, you're ready to truly get the most out of the transcription. You'll not only be able to have an easier time learning it, technically speaking that is, but as you practice it, your ears will learn to associate what is going on in the context of the included 2/5s and other cadences. And this is extremely useful because with this information, you can easily transpose selected phrases from the solo to different keys and fingerings and even create variations of the existing lines. Furthermore, all of this can now be applied to different standards because we are in essence learning the language of jazz and how to apply its grammar. And that's why we study transcriptions to begin with. In conclusion, for a transcription to be useful and influence our improvisations, you might have gathered that there is some prior knowledge that we have to possess. Otherwise, you are putting the cart before the horse. Memorizing a jazz transcription without an understanding of all the underlying building blocks that I've described will be useless if your goal is to gather improvisational vocabulary. So if this is your case and you lack these resources, before I sign off, I want to let you know that I have designed a set of comprehensive online courses to supply guitarists with this knowledge. It's called the Bebop Guitar Improv Series and features 6 books and hundreds of step-by-step videos guaranteed to take your playing to the next level. For more info, please visit bebopguitar.richiezelland.com. I hope this lesson has been useful. As usual, I welcome your comments and appreciate your likes. And if this is your first time on the Jazz Guitar channel and you enjoyed this lesson, please subscribe and don't forget to click on that bell icon so you will be notified of my upcoming lessons. Until we meet again, have fun, but be sure to stay safe, and may peace be with you.